Talking Nerdcore, Talking Nerdcore today. We're talking Nerdcore, Talking Nerdcore our way. We're talking Nerdcore, Talking Nerdcore today. We're talking Nerdcore, Talking Nerdcore.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's the animeoveranalyst here, and welcome to another episode of Talking Nerdcore. Today I'm doing this by myself, and I figured that I would actually post my top 20 anime. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm actually doing it live on Twitch, and if you're interested in seeing me do any other videos, then post a comment down below in the YouTube section if you're watching this on YouTube. Obviously, if you're listening to this on Spotify or any other podcasting platform, that's going to be a little hard to do. So make sure to follow me on YouTube, and you can comment on down below what you think I should cover whenever I do these kind of independent videos. So, with all that being said, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that I'm using Tier List Maker, and let me tell you, this website was a pain in the butt to actually get everything organized. But I got everything organized, and instead of doing S, A, B, C, D tiers, I've got 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, and some honorable mentions. So, I think this will be a fun episode, so let's just jump right on into it. So, my first anime that I'm going to talk about, my number 20th spot, is going to be The Seven Deadly Sins. So, The Seven Deadly Sins was one of the first anime that I had ever seen. It was back when I wasn't really into anime. I had seen some Naruto at the time, and I had seen Magi, but I hadn't really seen Seven Deadly Sins, and the only reason why I started watching it was because one of my friends was super hyped about it, and he just couldn't stop talking about it. So I thought, hey, why not just jump into it and watch it? And I enjoyed the anime quite a lot, and I followed it even past season 2, and I thought season 2 was decent. Towards the end, yeah, the animation quality was going south, and a lot of other things were going south, but for the most part, I really enjoyed Seven Deadly Sins. And then, season 3 and 4 hit, and it made me cry on the inside. Those two seasons were so bad. The animation quality was terrible. The plot was terrible. And I just felt bad because, yes, the show never was super crazy Death Note levels, and Death Note is on this list, by the way, but I just couldn't care enough about it towards the end. And so when the anime finally finished, I was more happy than anything just to be I'm done. Now, I might be wrong, but there might be another season that was announced somewhere. I thought I heard that, and I was wait, I thought it finished. So maybe not. I don't know. If there's another season, I mean, I'll suffer through it. I'll still watch it because I'm invested in characters. Bon is one of my favorite characters of all time. I freaking love Bon. And all the other characters, I think they're decent. The anime itself does a really good job at making relationships. That is probably its best feature for me, is how it can create character relationships and how different characters with different kind of personalities interact with others and how they try to form relationships. And I like that a lot because, at least in the early seasons, it felt like each character was very much driven by emotions, by these core human feelings. Bon with his depression, Meliodas with his depression, the difference between their two depressions. Well, you know how Bon was more masochistic, while freaking Meliodas was more putting up a facade. So I appreciate those and how they formed their relationships. And it wasn't really one of those anime that beat around the bush when it came to relationships, for the most part. I mean, there's still the King Deanne dynamic where King and Deanne liked each other, but they couldn't really communicate to each other. But they were like the only example, and they fit so well. Everyone else, it was like, yes, we like each other. Let's vocalize it. Let's be it. We're good. And I like that. I appreciate that. I kind of hate it when anime like beat around the bush when it comes to relationships. It's just like, just talk about it. Don't avoid it. And we get that a lot with anime. So that's Seven Deadly Sins. It's my number 20. So coming in at number 19 is something that you podcast listeners might recognize. It is Trinity VII. So Trinity VII was an anime that was recommended to me by Storm's Cryomancer, and I initially read the manga. I read pretty much all the manga. I think I'm actually like 20 chapters away from finishing it, or maybe not. I don't know. It's one of those manga that I thought ended and then turned out had like 100 more chapters. So I had to go and find other ways to read it because the way I was reading it couldn't. So definitely enjoyed watching it. And this, by the way, this is an anime only list. So I'm putting that caveat here because if it was manga or manga and anime, then Trinity VII would actually be higher up on this list because I really enjoyed reading the manga. Yes, it was very ecchi, and yes, there's a lot of points where I was like, there could be some better storytelling abilities. Now, I do think it's better at telling stories than Seven Deadly Sins, at least from Season 2 onwards. Like I said, Seven Deadly Sins, the first 2 seasons were pretty solid. It was just after that I thought just was a dumpster fire. So I really enjoyed reading Trinity VII, and the only reason why it's number 19 is just because it's only got like a season and a couple movies. Actually, I think it might have 2 seasons of the anime, and I watched it. I have watched the anime. I did that immediately after reading it, and the anime is pretty faithful to the manga. However, the manga is like 40 pages per chapter, which is very unique, and I appreciate that on its own side, but that's a different discussion. So, yep, that's going to be it for Trinity VII. I don't know what else to say about it. I think it's just a solid anime, but with quite some storytelling flaws. And I think here, while I was talking about manga, I might as well do my first honorable mentions. I have 3 honorable mentions, and so my first one I'm going to place is One Piece. One Piece is an honorable mention because I had seen like the first couple arcs of One Piece. I pretty much watched up to Baratie, then dropped it because they introduced a character called Pearl in Baratie, and you're like, who cares about Pearl? Pearl is just a side character that doesn't do anything. And my reasoning for dropping the anime was that up to this point, I was sitting here and I'm like, there's some goofy stuff going along, but I can kind of go along with it. I was always on the fence of the character designs, to be honest, of One Piece, and I thought even the sound effects sounded cheesy as heck. Didn't really care for the sound effects. And so I basically got up to where they introduced Pearl, and I'm like, that's it. They just stooped to as low as a shield, a walking, talking shield. And that's all Pearl was. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take this show seriously at all. And so I completely dropped One Piece at that time. Now, a few years later, I picked up the manga, and from then on, I was able to read the manga, and I love every bit about it from the manga perspective. So that's why it's on my honorable mentions. Yes, I've seen bits and pieces of the anime, and I've been like rewatching Wano a little bit, but for the most part, I haven't seen it, so I didn't feel like I could put it on this list. So next, let's see now, what is my next one? Oh, it's another one that you podcast listeners / viewers would know. It is Serial Experiments Lane. Now, I did a podcast episode about this anime about 2 weeks ago with Sine Wave Fox, and this anime is very bizarre. It's not for everyone, and it's very unique in the way that it delivers its story. It's kind of all over the place. And if you listen to that episode that I talked about it with Sinewave, he brought up the fact that there's a lot of things in this anime that they introduce and then they just leave open. They don't reintroduce it. They tend to forget about stuff. And I think that was the biggest issue I had with this anime. I think there's a lot of possible avenues that they could have gone down, but they never really explained it. And in the end, I was kind of sitting there a little bit confused, like what was going on, because the story itself just kind of became weird. So in the end, I wasn't really feeling that show. And so that's why I put it in 17. And I can't say I wasn't feeling it because I put it above Trinity VII and Seven Deadly Sins. I liked the show, but I don't like it as much as a lot of the other anime on this list. I think it's solid enough. So we're going to move on to number 17. Did I say Lane was 17? Lane's 18. 17 is The Promised Neverland. Now, if you followed my YouTube channel at all, Promised Neverland is my very first series that I covered on this channel. In fact, they were the first videos I ever posted on this channel. They were my Promised Neverland reviews, because at the time, nobody was really talking about The Promised Neverland. And I wanted to dedicate some parts of my channel to going in, reading The Promised Neverland, and giving my thoughts about it. And so I did that. I had some relatively organized video structures, and at the time I was posting about maybe one video a week, 1 to 2 videos a week, and it was basically how I was starting to get, or that's what I was doing to get started. And I have quite an emotional connection to The Promised Neverland. I really enjoy that anime a lot, and it saddens me that season 2 took such a nosedive. So when I read the manga, one of my favorite arcs of all time would have taken place in season 2, and it's called the Goldie Pond arc. And it's when Emma goes and gets kidnapped by some people, and she gets left in this kind of other, how do I describe it? She gets kind of placed in this little village with other kind of like runaways, and you get to kind of learn how this village was structured. And it was so good when it came to world building, because it expanded on the demons kind of society that the anime never really touched on. And it's very unfortunate they didn't do it. They didn't introduce one of the best characters in the anime, Yugo. And that makes me so sad. Like, that dude, when he wasn't introduced in the anime, I literally lost my shit. Because up to that point in the season, I was like, okay, they're skipping over some things, but they're little things. Like, I was okay with that. And then they skipped stuff, and they kept skipping stuff, and then it was like they took their own journey, and they lost me. Like, the manga had like 3 seasons in it, and they wanted to boil it all down to 2. And that made me sad, the way they wanted to rush it and just finish it off. There was no need for that. There really wasn't. So it's number 17 because I've got such an emotional attachment to it. It would be higher on this list if you only considered season 1. And I thought about that for a little bit, but I've got to consider the anime entirely. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to some of the other anime on this list. So, in its entirety, it's number 17. Going on to number 16 is Mob Psycho 100. So, Mob Psycho 100 is an interesting anime. Its art style, I personally am not much of a fan of, and even bits and pieces of the story I really couldn't care for. Like, for the longest time, I really didn't like Reagan, and I still honestly don't like Reagan. I know for some people that he's like one of their favorite characters, and I can see why. I really don't care about him. They introduced a ghost, I think called Dimple or something, and he annoyed the crap out of me. I couldn't care about Dimple at all. Now, that being said, there were definitely parts of Mob Psycho that I did love. I love a lot of the interactions that Mob had with, like, the fitness group. That was super cool. And some of the, like, ways that he dealt with some of the villains, some of the antagonists were also really cool. And I liked when he got, like, really pissed off, especially in season 2. I think season 2 of Mob Psycho was really good. So that's why it's pretty high on this list, or I'd say higher than the others, is because no, I don't have that much of an emotional attachment to the show, but it's a solid show. And you'll see that throughout this list that I will have solid attachments to the show, and that trumps more of if the show is better at storytelling than other shows. You're gonna see shows that you're gonna be like, why is that even high up on this list? And it's because I have an emotional attachment to that show. Like I said, this is my top 20 favorite anime. It's not the top 20 anime that I think is the best anime. And I think that's a very key difference there. So we're going to go on to the next one, which is number 15. It is Code Geass. Code Geass is yet another interesting anime. And it was going through a time where I was really looking into more of the psychological anime. I had, like, previously seen Tokyo Ghoul, and if you're like, Tokyo Ghoul isn't a psychological anime, I'm like, I was going through like an emo phase. And so I was watching Code Geass. I think I had just finished Fullmetal Brother Alchemist, and I wanted like a short anime that I could just kind of watch casually. And so I watched Code Geass, and I gotta say, it's a solid anime. And I never really understood some of the hate that it got, especially for the. I'm trying to remember the other dude that what basically people hate on. It's not. It's like Lelouch's friend. I'm blinking on his name right now, but people really hated that character as well as several other characters, and I'm like, they made sense to me. And it could just be because I have a little bit of a heart for like people who just want to do the right thing. And a lot of those characters were thinking that they were doing the right thing, and they may have just been going about it the wrong way. And so that's kind of my thing. Otherwise, can't really say anything else about Code Geass. It's been a while since I've watched it, so there's lots of holes in my memory, but I remember just enjoying it. I don't think I was like overly wowed by it. I mean, the ending is really good. I will say the ending is really good, and I like how everything kind of tied together. But in the end, like, I have no attachment to this, as opposed to a lot of other people that do have more of attachment to Code Geass, and I can understand why. You'll start to see kind of a trend in my list. So, coming in at number 14 is Jujutsu Kaisen. Where are we? Here we are. Jujutsu Kaisen was a solid anime for me. It is very, very solid. There's a lot of things that I really did enjoy about the anime. I mean, the animation is just top tier, but that's pretty standard nowadays, anyways. And a lot of the characters I thought were pretty good, especially Gojo. I love Gojo, and I think the anime has some potential. Now, I haven't I haven't read anything past where we are at in the season, but I think it's a pretty solid anime. I like the whole idea that Yuji, he's got the demon inside him like every other anime protagonist, but he like accumulates the power by eating fingers or something. It's so weird, and I kind of like it that way. And Sukuna's personality is really cool, and I kind of like the world. I really do. I like how it kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit. You know, the whole Aotodo, who's like, what type of women do you prefer? Like, characters like that, I really enjoy. So, I think that's why it's number 14. And honestly, it might just have a recency bias. Like I said, shows that I have more of a connection to, I'll put higher up on this list than shows that I'm like okay with. And so next on this list is actually Death Note. Death Note coming in at number 13. And the only reason really that it's number 13 is because I don't have a connection to it. Like, I watched it and I thought the first half was great. Honestly, I think this show would be even higher on this list if it wasn't for the second half. Because after the second half, when they introduce all these other characters, I didn't give two craps about it at all. I did not care about any of the other characters that they introduced after the second half. And it really shows. The anime itself really went in decline. I didn't like how Light's demise came about. I thought it was kind of stupid. I felt like the show was trying to make him into someone power hungry, which he did at the end. He kind of got blinded by his own power. But I always felt like he was smart enough not to be blinded by his own power. And that threw me off a little bit. I always hate the trope of people who get blinded by their own power to the point where they're their own demise, because it feels like an overused trope, and it's almost something that it feels avoidable even. And so I dislike that type of trope, and there's a lot of anime, there's a lot of shows that use it, and that's like how the bad guys get defeated. Because they're so power hungry that they don't realize their one true weakness. And I just don't get that. The anime that captivate me more is when villains kind of realize their own weaknesses and they accommodate for it. And I just felt like Death Note didn't. It did that in the first half, then completely forgot about it in the second half. So that's why it is number 13 on this list. Coming in at number 12 is Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. What can I talk about this anime? It's a good anime. It really is. Really, the only reason why it's even this low on this list is because I don't remember it very much. I haven't seen it in the last 5 or 6 years. So it's been a while. I've watched a whole bunch of more anime since then. The Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood was like one of the first anime that I have seen. And I enjoyed it a lot. I really did. And it was kind of like one of my gateway drugs into anime. I had saw it and I was like, I can definitely really go into this. I really love the magic system. Alchemy is fantastic. I really like the idea of alchemy and how, like, the equal exchange. What, I can't remember the property, but it's like the property of equivalent exchange, something like that, where you have to make materials out of the exact same materials. Everything's equal. And I'm like, that's super cool because that's actually science. Everything generally tends to equal out. And usually if you're like, hey, you have a solid and it turns into a gas, yeah, the gas is just in a wider area. There's always some kind of effect where, like, either it will produce heat. Heat is a huge factor that people generally don't accumulate for. Whenever something like diminishes, you got to take heat into account because heat is energy. It's pure energy. So I really like the whole idea of equivalent exchange in Fullmetal Alchemist, and the storytelling is phenomenal. I love the storytelling in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And so that's why it's number 12 on the list. Really, it could be higher, but it's just because I haven't seen it in so long. Okay, coming in at number 11 is Demon Slayer. And did I say Fullmetal Alchemist was 12 or 11? I don't remember. It was 12. 11 is Demon Slayer. So, Demon Slayer, the reason why it's above Fullmetal Alchemist is, like, on the flip side, I have seen Demon Slayer recently, and I'm more invested in its characters. I'm especially a fan of all people, Zenitsu. I think Zenitsu has a lot of potential. Tanjiro is pretty basic, and I like Tanjiro. He's just cool. He's a good boy protagonist, and I have a heart for good boy protagonists. And so he's pretty cool, but he's pretty basic in that aspect. Like, he reminds me a lot of, like, Sora from Kingdom Hearts. Always positive, always knows the right thing to do. Yay. Zenitsu, on the other hand, I always found fascinating because of his initial fear. He's very realistic in my mind because he's dealing with a world full of demon hunters and demons and all these crazy things, and he's like, I don't want to die. Can I just not die? And, I mean, everyone around him is calm, but really, if you think about it, his reactions seem pretty legit to me. Like, he's terrified, and I think that's something to be a little bit admirable. And then I kind of like the whole idea that when he calms down, that's when he can do, like, the one blade strike, the one attack strike. So he's really cool. He's a character that I'm very fascinated with, and so I'm gonna keep on watching it. Now, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Demon Slayer, in my mind, can swap between the two, honestly. And if I watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood again, I can almost promise you it'll go further up on this list. It's just, like I said, it's been a while. All right. Number 10. Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter is such a good anime. It really, really is. And it's another one of those anime that I haven't seen in a solid minute. Now, it's been about 3 to 4 years, so it's been a lot more recent. But it's still been a hot minute since I've seen it. But I really, really enjoy the dynamic between Gon and Killua, because their friendship, as it evolves, it really shows how it's almost like Killua is the main protagonist, because he's watching Gon, who doesn't change hardly at all character-wise, whereas whereas Killua is learning what it takes to be a friend, or have a friend, or what it takes to live in this world, and how to overcome anxieties and depressions, and just the feeling of worthlessness. And so I've got a lot of admiration for those characters. I think the characters in this world are solid. The power system's really, really cool. It is pretty complicated, and so sometimes I couldn't wrap my head around it, and I kind of go in the end of BS anime powers. Because in the end, that's what half of anime is. It's just BS anime powers. There's really no other way to describe it. It's magic, and they can do it through their spirits. And so I like that. And I was also really fascinated with Kurapika. Kurapika it was such a fascinating character to me with just the whole revenge aspect to his character. I think Kurapika is a guy. Sounds like it was voice acted by a female, but I'm pretty sure Kurapika is a guy. I'm not sure. I was always kind of confused about that. Not gonna lie. I couldn't figure out if it was a guy or a girl, but it doesn't really matter anyways. So, overall, like, I love the Chimera Ant arc. The Chimera Ant arc is so fantastic. Mostly what happens with Meruem and Komugi. I really love that relationship so much. And Hunter x Hunter just developing that and developing the theme of what makes a monster, what makes a human. It's so cool. It's so fascinating, and it does so well, and it just makes me sad that they didn't continue it. So that's about it for that one. That is why Hunter x Hunter is number 10. Like I said, one of my absolute favorite anime for sure. Number 9 is Attack on Titan. So, Attack on Titan is very, very cool. It's another very cool anime. And say what you want to say about the ending of Attack on Titan. Overall, the anime is super solid. And even if they keep the same ending coming into the next part of the season, I don't really care too much about that. I think the anime itself is solid. And I really like the whole perspective of Eren kind of going through all of this psychological trauma of this world, because it's a very, very cruel world. They're not afraid to kill off characters for the most part. You kind of get to start seeing some characters not die, but for the most part, they're not afraid to kill characters, and I think it's really, really cool that they do. Like even in the latest season where Gabby, when Gabby was introduced, I actually like Gabby's character, believe it or not. I know that she gets a lot of hate, but for me, she makes a lot of sense. She's just someone that she believes is doing the right thing. Granted, she's brainwashed to all heck, but yeah. I have no fault for Gabby whatsoever, and it's just a lot of unfortunate events come to pass when she boards the airship that's taking Eren away. And I feel bad about that. But Eren, the whole dynamic between Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, their friendship is so fascinating to me and how it's constructed. And my only wish is that Mikasa is a better character, because she tends to be very just Eren focused. Like, she is so focused on Eren. And Eren is so oblivious because he's a shonen protagonist. So that's kind of my gripe with the anime, I suppose. But it's a solid anime, and I enjoyed watching it. So otherwise, I have no issues with it. I think it's a really good anime that everyone should definitely check out. All right. Coming in at number 8 is just double checking. Oh, this one's going to be one that's going to be a hotly contested. I think this is going to be my most contested pick. One of my most contested picks. I think I got one that might be even more contested, but here it goes. It is No Game, No Life, coming in at number 8. Let me tell you, I love this anime so much. I might be more of a sucker for isekai than I give myself credit for, because I was kind of realizing that a lot of my top picks are isekai related or close to it. But No Game, No Life, for me, is such a solid anime. I have no problems with it at all. When I was making this list, I was like, I can't think of an issue with No Game, No Life. Really. I wish that there's a season 2. There isn't a season 2, and it makes me sad. otherwise, like the entire anime, it just had me going. It had me questioning things. There were so many cool little aspects, like when Sora kind of disappeared, they removed him from the intro song and like the opening song, and I thought that was so cool. Just the dynamic between Sora and Shiro, even though it's creepy as all heck, I still like it. It's very cool. I love the world that they're in with the rule set of being all about gaming. And the rules, there's like 3 rules to gaming. It's like you got to set up a bargain. A loser has to do the bargain and don't get caught cheating. It wasn't don't cheat. It was don't get caught. And that was so cool how Sora kind of figures out how to cheat throughout the games. And I thought that was really cool. In the end, like that was probably the most like controversial part of the show was when Sora flips a coin and it was like heads this or tails that, and then he makes the coin like stand vertically upwards so it's neither heads nor tails. And I thought that was just really, really cool because he found a loophole. That's something that Sora is so good at doing, is finding loopholes. And I think that's the point, was that the show was trying to show that there doesn't have to be this dichotomy, this A or B, heads or tails. There can be something else. And I wish that shows kind of show that more, where it's like, kind of shows the loopholes and things. And overall, like animation quality, I love the color palette, the very bright colors. Like, I have nothing else to say about the show because it's just a solid show. And if you're into like kind of ecchi type shows, definitely check it out because it's definitely got some very interesting ecchi. So we're gonna go on to number 7, which is an anime that I am currently watching and I love so much. If you've been following me on Twitter, you'll know pretty much what I'm talking about because I'm constantly gushing over this anime. It is Gintama. Gintama is so interesting in the fact that the Gintoki, the main shonen protagonist, doesn't have any dreams. And that's very unique in anime. Almost every single main protagonist has a dream that they're trying to achieve. Luffy wants to be the Pirate King. Gon wants to find his father. Light wants to defeat L with the Death Note, and they have goals. Gintama's goals is he just wants to make a living. He just wants to keep on surviving in this world where he fought a war and lost. And that's super key there. This dude is dealing with PTSD, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that he uses is a facade because he's dealing with a lot of depression and stuff. And it's mainly the show is like him trying to overcome the past wars by trying to forget about it and living in the present. And you see that philosophy works a lot of the time, where it's the whole idea of forgetting about the past, living in the present now. You can't change the past, let's only deal with the here and now. And he does that a lot, when he accepts Kagura and Shinpachi into his group, and they make the odd job sort of trio. And they go out and do all sorts of wacky stuff. It's so fascinating, and you get to kind of see how Gintama loves to live his life doing what he thinks is best. And he's not a perfect character. Like, he has gambling problems. He has, like, high blood sugar of all things. They like to keep pointing back. He's like, you have high blood sugar. Don't make it. Like, normal shit like that makes the show feel so realistic, even though it deals with aliens coming from outer space and taking over the Earth. It's so focused on real human emotions, and there has not been a single arc, and I'm like 150 episodes in. There has not been a single arc where I'm like, I don't care about that villain. All of the antagonists, you could hate them all the way up to the very end, and then the very end, they do this weird kind of magic trick where all of a sudden you're like, I can't hate the villain. I get where they're going, and I know that they need to be finished, but I can't hate them. And it's so fascinating to me with that, because every single villain feels fleshed out. Every single character feels very fleshed out. And I just love that. There's even arcs where they start off being super goofy. And keep this in mind, the show is very much kind of slice of life based. And that's what I always recommend to people who want to start Gintama. It's approach it as a slice of life, because there are almost no arcs the first 50 episodes. And each episode is like both canon and not canon at the same time, where you don't really have to watch it, but they do affect things happening in the show. There is a time does pass in the show, which is super important. They are actually they comment on that quite a lot about time passing. And I just love that whole idea. Plus, the show is so funny. The show basically breaks the fourth wall all the time. They'll spend the first 5 minutes of an episode talking about budget cuts for the anime. Like, and it'll just be a single frame. Like, you'll just see a single frame, and it'll just be the voice actors talking dialogue over it. And that will be the first 5 minutes, and it'll be the characters being like, the animators need a break, so, we're gonna talk about stuff, and you'll have Wachinpachi's like, what? No, but everybody will leave the anime. No one will watch the anime. And Kagura's like, choices have to be made. Things have to happen. And just the whole dynamic between the three voice actors are so good. And I love that so much. It's so unique. And it's one of the only anime that I can think of where we can see just a single frame, and I'll be invested in watching it the entire time, because the interactions with each other, it's phenomenal. Like, I just watched this last episode, which was hilarious. This last episode I watched, it took place in like one of these mobile food stalls, and the guy in the stall is talking to the camera, i.e. us, and he's like, everyone who comes in are anonymous, and they come here and they can just talk about the truth, and they can just vent to me. And so we're like, okay. And so we get in and we hear someone that sounds exactly like Gintoki come in and talk about his problems. And then someone else comes in and they talk about their problems. And then more people come in, and you're sitting there and you're like, by this point, we recognize who the voices go. And they're talking about all the stuff that happens in Gintama, all these relationships. And so you're sitting like, these characters are talking about each other, and then the end pulls it out, and it's all these characters that look very close to Gintama and all the others, but their faces are like uglier, and you see Gintoki just sitting against the wall going like, I'm never going into that place. Like, episodes like that where there's so much like subtle humor, and they're so good at creating a punchline and then delivering the punchline at the end in such an unexpected way. It's so good in that aspect. So that's why I think Gintama is number 11. It's one of my favorite animes, and I wish that it could be higher up on this list. The only reason why it's this low for me personally is because I have yet to finish it. That's literally the reason why. I'm 150 episodes in, which is a lot more than like half of these shows on here. And I'm so invested in this show. I love all the characters. I love every single one of the characters. I don't think there's a single character I hate in this show, except for, I guess, maybe the alien dude who wants to keep a zoo. That guy I don't care about. He's annoying. Everyone else I enjoy a lot, and that's just good writing. Gintama has some of the best writing I've ever seen when it comes to anime. It really, really does. All right. Coming in at number 9 is... Or sorry, not number 9. Wow. Doing this list, I'm just kind of like tired. It's just wearing me down. It's an anime that I have just seen and, well, hopefully be on one of the next couple podcast episodes. I won't spoil it when, but it should be really soon. It's ReZero. So I just watched ReZero like 2 weeks ago, and I binged the whole show, and it's so fascinating to me. I really, really like the world. I really like the characters, and I really like how the world molds and kind of punishes Subaru. I've got some strong opinions about Subaru, and I have some kind of thoughts that I think I would wish could get cleared up a little bit. I think he's not a perfect character, and the anime really does try to point out that he is not a perfect character. He's got flaws, and I definitely think that that's a show that everybody should watch. And so I'm not going to say any more about it because I'm going to have a future episode on it here within the next couple podcast episodes. And so keep an eye out for that because I will be talking more about ReZero in that episode in particular. All right. Coming in at number 5. Actually, before I do number 5, yes, I'm very professional. I might as well talk about my 2 honorable mentions. So, my 2 more, because I have 3 total. My second honorable mention is Naruto. The reason why it's an honorable mention is because story-wise, it is better than most, or at least half of these shows that I've talked about here on this anime, or on this list. I just don't care about the show at all. I have no personal attachments to Naruto. In fact, I dropped it in the war arc because I just couldn't care about it anymore. And so there's definitely a lot of negative aspects about Naruto, but there's a lot of good positive aspects. And I understand the culture revolving around it. I just can't get along with it. Like, the fights are probably the best aspect of the show, but I don't watch anime just for the fights. I watch it just to kind of see the world building and see some of the character interactions. That's what I'm mainly for. And most of the characters in Naruto, I don't care about. Like, the ones I really cared about the most were Shikamaru and Pervy Sage, Jiraiya. Naruto, I thought was cool, but I can't get on board with him much anymore. Mostly when it came into Shippuden. And I am grouping Naruto and Naruto Shippuden together. I know they're like 2 separate anime. I'm grouping them together because it kind of isn't fair for the rest of the anime on this list. I mean, seasonals and stuff. And honestly, like, OG and Naruto would be, I think, higher up on the list. Naruto Shippuden would bring it down, so they kind of balance each other out anyways. So that's why it's not on this list. It's just I can't figure out a place to put it, and I just don't have any care for it. I really, really don't. It's not like I hate it or anything. I even had a podcast episode with Barasu 13, and we talked to Naruto the entire episode, and we also talked a lot about Boruto, but I mean, I got it, and I was like, I enjoyed the show, and that's about it. Like, I've got no attachment to it, and so that is why it's an honorable mention. And my last honorable mention is My Hero Academia. That's right. All of you people are probably already torching me in the comment section, being like, why isn't My Hero Academia above Serial Experiments Lain or Seven Deadly Sins? It's a better anime. And you're right. It is a better anime, but this is not a best anime tier list. It's my favorite anime tier list. My Hero Academia, I don't care about at all. Once again, it's almost the exact same reason with Naruto. I have no feelings about it whatsoever, and I've seen all of it. And if anything, like the characters they felt fake to me almost. Like I didn't care about Deku at all, and how do I explain it? Because it felt like a cartoon version of an anime, if that makes any sense. It felt like it wasn't geared to someone like me. It felt like it was geared towards like smaller children, almost a younger age demographic. It really did feel like that. Now, I know the manga is getting a lot darker in that aspect, and even the last season, I was starting to see that. It was getting a lot darker. So there's a lot of hope for it. But these first several seasons, I was just sitting there, and I'm like, no, there didn't feel like any stakes. I felt like the bad guys were super weak, at least character-wise. Like, I didn't care about All For One at all. He just felt like evil for the sake of being evil. And Shigaraki, I think it's Shigaraki. He just felt like a kid to me. He just felt like a brat. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I can't care about him at all. It was like he was trying to create this league, and I'm like, why does anyone follow him? Is it because of All For One? Or I guess. Otherwise, like, it didn't make sense to me. It felt very childish. It felt like there was a lot of childish elements in the show, and it wasn't reflected in the world that it was trying to create. It was trying to create a very serious world, and I could not take it seriously. So that's one of my biggest issues with My Hero Academia, and that's why it's an honorable mention, because it is not one of my favorite anime. All right, top 5. Coming in at number 5, I'm just going to double check my list that I made previously. Yes. Probably the other show that's going to give me hate because it's not My Hero Academia. Oh, it's not that one. It is Fairy Tail. So, like I said, I have a huge emotional attachment to some anime. Fairy Tail is that long-running shonen anime that I developed such an emotional attachment towards. It's the first anime that I actually read the manga for. Basically, I was going through a rough period of time where I was very, very depressed. And I really only made like one friend. He was a coworker at the job that I worked at. And he told me to watch Fairy Tail. Well, I wasn't sure if I was going to be interested in Fairy Tail. And to be honest, I wasn't within the first season and a half. And I almost dropped it immediately because, like, the first season I didn't care too much about. But he kept egging me on. He's like, hey, no, don't, just keep watching it. Keep watching it. And he loved Natsu so much. He was like, he is hilarious. And he talked about the dynamic between Natsu and Gray. So I kept watching it. And then I was like, oh, I really like the Tower of Heaven arc, where we get Urza's backstory. We get to meet Jalal. And then we get introduced to Gajiel. And I started falling in love with Gajiel's character. He's so fascinating to me. He's one of the guys that, like, screwed up so badly, and everybody acknowledges it. And he harms one of the guild members. He harms Levi. He pretty much crucifies her. And that scene when we see Levi and the other her two friends, Jed and Droy, get crucified to a tree, it's so heart-wrenching. The show has so many moments where you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, that hurts. Oh, you start developing an attachment to the Fairy Tale Guild and all the characters in it. All these wacky personalities and all these characters that have so many like cool character traits. I loved Elfman as a character, and going into and delving into like some of his depressed sides where he felt like he betrayed his family because he thought he accidentally killed Lisana. Like there's so many little bit of avenues that the show could go towards. And I think Nux Taku talked about the show perfectly in that it was almost a masterpiece. And the fact that the show should have focused more on the guild itself than on Natsu, Lucy, Happy, Urza, Wendy, the main core. Because if it focused more on the side characters, I think it would have developed more. Because it was almost like the guild itself was the main protagonist. And I love that idea because it fit so well. I loved every member of the guild, and I thought that there was so many different avenues and story plots that they could go down. It's one of the few shows where I really enjoyed watching the filler episodes for it because we got to see more of the guild. I think that show was really good when it came to filler episodes. And so I definitely recommend watching Fairy Tail. And one of my favorite arcs of all time, the Grand Magic Games arc, where we get to see all these characters, all these Fairy Tail Guild members excel at different things. It was so cool because you get to see different parts of the guild function, and you really, really do get to feel like you're part of the guild. I am just such a huge fan of Fairy Tail. My first ever analysis type video was the relationship between Gray and Juvia. And I talked about how it was kind of like a relationship focused on communication and what it means to communicate with each other. The next relationship I was going to talk about, it was going to be in my Ships of Anime series that I started and then never continued. But I might go back to because it's just stuff that I'm thinking about now, and I've actually got a completed script for. I was going to talk about Gajiel and Levi and their interactions with each other. In fact, I might even make that a separate podcast episode. I might actually do that, where I do a Ships of Anime type of video and make that a podcast episode. Like I said, comments down in the YouTube comment sections if you think that would be cool. But basically, I really liked their interactions with each other. And with Levi and Gajiel, it was more of Gajiel learning to be accepted. And it's kind of like a whole lesson on acceptance. There are so many themes between characters and character relationships in the show. No, the plot isn't that great. But the characters themselves are fantastic. And I love all these characters, and they make me feel so many different things. I think it's fair to criticize Fairy Tail. I know that there's a small group of Fairy Tail fans that think the anime is perfect, but there's probably like that with every anime. No, the anime isn't perfect, but there's still really, really good points about it, and I feel like those points are overlooked, and I might want to go and start talking more about Fairy Tail because I love that anime so much. So that's why it's number 5. Coming in at number 4 is Konosuba. Okay, so this one's a very fun one. I love Konosuba so much. Konosuba was probably the first anime where I watched the entire thing through and then immediately rewatched it. I love Konosuba so much. Something about how Kazuma just came into the world. He's once again thinking he's a shonen protagonist. He thinks he's the best, and then he gets thrown in, and he deals with all of these stupidities, and it's just watching him deal with the stupidities. He's like, why am I in this? It's so good. It's so funny. The show has made me laugh so many times. Like, that is very important for me, and you'll kind of see that my top anime, Gintama, Fairy Tail, Konosuba, these are all anime that made me laugh. No Game, No Life. They're all anime that made me laugh. And that's very important for me. If I can laugh in an anime, I can really go along with it. And the more that it makes me laugh, the more I feel attached to it. Maybe that says more about me than anything, but I love these types of anime where it's just so goofy. Like, it's so completely ridiculous. I guess that's also with Fairy Tail. It has a very goofy nature to it. Konosuba, so incredibly goofy. And I just love it for what it is. Yes, so, like, the character Aqua can be annoying, but that's kind of the purpose. She is useless in her own world, and everybody comments about it. But I love all the other characters as well. I love Megumin. I love Darkness. I really love Kazuma, and I really love how they all interact with each other. And I think they introduce a new season coming up, maybe. I might do a reaction video to, like, whatever trailer is out. I'm thinking of doing that for several trailers, actually. So, I'm really interested in seeing how that goes about, because I really, really love Konosuba so much. And, yeah, it's number 4, probably only because of recency bias. I might like Fairy Tail even more than Konosuba, but I think the reason why I say Konosuba is number 4 is because its plot is a lot more solid than Fairy Tail. And I think that's really it. That's really the dividing factor. Konosuba has a very solid plot, whereas Fairy Tail can be all over the place at times. All right. Coming in at number 3 is Maggie. That's right, Maggie. Take whatever CC you want to call it. It was like Labyrinth of Magic or Kingdom of Magic. To me, it's just Maggie. This was the first anime I've ever seen. Minus, I think there was an anime I saw called Blood Plus, but I don't count that because I hardly remember it. Maggie was the first anime I had ever seen. I saw it in high school. It was recommended to me by one of my close friends at the time, and he was like the founder of the anime club in my high school, and he was like, "Hey bro, you gotta check out Maggie." And I did, and I fell in love with it. The magic system just baffles me. I love the whole idea of the Ruh, and just how Aladdin is such an OP character because he has like infinite mana, whereas everyone else has finite mana. And the power system is basically how many dungeons have you conquered. And the idea of dungeons were so fascinating to me. And we got to explore a whole bunch of dungeons in like the first couple of seasons. And I loved that so much. Seeing the dungeons and then getting the armor at the end and seeing all the different final bosses. And then we get to see the world politics. And I gotta tell you, the world politics in the show is so cool. And I love how everyone has like a different type of governmental system. You got the dictatorship, you have the monarchy, you have kind of like the theocrats in like the magic system, the magic kingdom. You have Sinbad, who is completely capitalistic, along with Alibaba. And not Alibaba. Yeah, it's Alibaba. And just those kind of references there. And I'm one of the fans of just seeing something different. And I feel like capitalism in a lot of shows is always shown in a negative light. And here, capitalism actually showed a way to beat slavery, which was super fascinating to me. Like, that's how Alibaba tried to fix slavery, how Sinbad tried to fix slavery. And they tried to do it through the open market. And you don't get to see it too much in the anime, but it really shows up a lot in the manga, how, like, how the society functions so much better because it became more of a free world society. And I love that so much. You get to see how governments change. And it's so cool because it soon became a show not based off of power levels, like who's physically strong, but it became a show kind of about how can they make the best version of their world. So I definitely recommend watching Magi. I wish they continued the anime. I don't think they'll ever continue the anime, but it's definitely something worth checking out. Y'all should really check out Maggie. There are so many cool characters. Like freaking Morgiana. She is. I've always stated I'm never really into waifus. I'm not much of a waifu person. Morgiana is like one of the only exceptions. She can be my waifu. Mainly because I love her whole character development of how she was a slave, and how even when she got freed out of the bonds, she was still kind of a slave in her own mental state, and how she couldn't break free of that. And then how Alibaba and Aladdin finally broke her free, and she was one of the few female protagonists that could actually do something up until a certain point. Her character gets shafted in the manga after where the anime ends, which is so sad. It's so sad. Her character could be so good. It had so much potential, and then it just turned into more of a love interest for Alibaba. And I'm like, yeah, I like the love interest, but she's so powerful. She's such a powerful character, and yet she does absolutely nothing in the second half of the manga. It makes me so sad. But that's why it's number 3. Number 2, Black Clover. Black Clover is one of my favorite all-time anime, and it really took me by surprise how much I love Black Clover. And it may be just because I love the OPs and EDs so much, but it's also another one of those anime where it makes me laugh a lot, and I feel like I connect with all the characters. Like every single character of the Black Bulls, I connect with on a spiritual level almost. And it's another one of those. It basically does what Fairy Tail couldn't do, which was make the show almost about the guild itself. Yes, our main protagonist is Asta, and we follow Asta, but in the end, he's almost not just the main protagonist. You know, we got Yuno, who's even from a different guild, but we get to see some of his journey. We get to see character development from Noelle, who, as a tsundere, can't admit anything because she's royalty, but how she learns to gain confidence in herself. We get to see Magna, also learn to be confident in his own skills, even though he's being constantly outdone by those that he look up to. We get all this type of cool character development that like long-running shonen struggles with. And it really is just giving all these side characters character development. That's actually why I like long-running shonen almost more than seasonal, because long-running shonen tend to be able to give character development to side characters, and I think that's pretty cool. Now, they often give it to side characters that I might not care about, but if done well, they can make it so that I can actually start to care about some of the side characters, and I think that's really, really admirable. And Black Clover is just one of the best anime to do that, where I can fall in love, and I did fall in love, and I do fall in love with every single character of the show. I don't think there's a single character where I'm like, I don't care about. Even the Baha guy, the hoo-ha guy, he's so incredibly annoying. Even he has some character development that's very interesting. So I definitely recommend you guys to watch Black Clover. I know the first several episodes are a little bit annoying. I didn't even find that annoying. I honestly, even though people found Asta screaming grating, I didn't think that was annoying at all. I felt like that was part of his character, and I just kind of got along with it. And yes, he toned down for the most part, and that's pretty cool. it's just like even Asta, like the way that he gives people hope and confidence. I just love his character. I love everything about Black Clover, the fight scenes, the themes. If you're more interested in my opinions on Black Clover, check out my podcast episode with Professor Kuro. He really nails why Black Clover is so good. And so I'm not going to talk very much more about Black Clover, but that is my number 2 spot. And then now coming in at number 1 is Made in Abyss. Half of you probably didn't see that coming. Maybe most of you. I don't know. Made in Abyss is my favorite anime manga. I love the show so much. I love the music. I listen to the soundtrack once a week. In fact, if you followed me on Twitter, you would have noticed that I posted my Rewind recap. My number 1 played artist is Kevin Penkin. He's the guy who wrote the music to Made in Abyss. Literally, all of his music that I've listened to are the Made in Abyss music. I love the soundtrack to Made in Abyss. It's so weird and abstract, but it's also so incredibly catchy, and it's so good. I love listening to the music. I love the animation. The animation is beautiful. I love Riko as a character. Riko is best girl, must protect her at all costs. Same thing with Reg. Reg is best boy, must protect him at all costs. And how heart-wrenching it is after the second third of the season. Now, I've heard a lot of people complain about how the season felt a little slow to develop, and how like the first half to 2/3 just felt standard anime. And my argument for that is, yeah, that's the point. It's supposed to kind of look like, oh, what a beautiful brand new world with a whole bunch of stuff and this and that. But you start to realize towards that how dangerous this beautiful new world is, and you get to see it through the eyes of kids. I think that is super important, that we're seeing this through their eyes. And the manga does it so well. I can't wait till season 2. I'm going to be doing a reaction to that trailer for sure. And we'll be doing it. Like, this channel, I started talking Made in Abyss reviews, and they're okay performing reviews, but they're the ones where I've gone really in depth. They're the only manga on this list that I own all the copies of the manga for, because I really want to delve into the series and pick out the nitty-gritty stuff so much. I love the manga a lot, and I know that this is more of an anime tier list, but like even the anime I love a lot. I love every bit of the anime. I'm just so floored with it. I'm so captivated by all the voice acting, so captivated by everything about it. Like, I binged the entire anime in one sitting, and I was like, I can't get enough of it. I really couldn't. And so that's why it's my top favorite anime. No, it's not the quote-unquote best anime. And that all boils down to what I said. This is my favorite anime. These are all anime that I have a strong connection to. And I have the strongest connection to Made in Abyss. Promised Neverland. Promised Neverland had the potential to be just as good as Made in Abyss. It was all about this really cool, fantastical world where there's an underlying dark element to it. Promised Neverland ventured into that world in the manga. The anime dipped away from that. I think the anime for Made in Abyss is not going to dip away from that dark aspects, because there's a lot of dark aspects. The movie was sheer proof that they weren't going to sheer away from the dark aspects of Made in Abyss. So that is my top 20. I'll just kind of go through it one more time now that we have it out. I have number 20 is Seven Deadly Sins. 19 is Trinity VII. 18 is Serial Experiments Lane. 17 is The Promised Neverland. 16 is Mob Psycho 100. 15 is Code Geass. 14 is Jujutsu Kaisen. 13 is Death Note. 12 is Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. 11 is Demon Slayer. 10 is Hunter x Hunter. 9 is Attack on Titan. 8 is No Game No Life. 7 is Gintama. 6 is ReZero. 5 is Fairy Tail. 4 is Konosuba. 3 is Magi. 2 is Black Clover, and 1 is Made in Abyss. And then my honorable mentions were, of course, One Piece, Naruto, and My Hero Academia. So that is my complete list. And so I hope y'all like this episode of Talking Nerdcore. I really liked making this. I really like compiling this list. And I think I've got some other ideas for whenever I do some more solo projects like this one. So, with all that being said, I'm the animeoveranalyst, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Talking Nerdcore, Talking Nerdcore.